This is Suddenly Family. I'm Samuel Burke, and these are the true stories of people's lives forever changed by at-home DNA tests. For any person who's experienced a shocking DNA result, life quickly separates into two very distinct chapters, before and after the DNA test. In an instant, your entire world changes, and you can never go back to the way it was before. For a woman named Connie Maltrop, that moment doesn't come until she's nearly 70 years old.
I always wanted her to love me, and she never was going to. I said, I forgive you for absolutely everything. She died 3 weeks later. I was never going to be able to find anything out until my daughter gave me Ancestry. That was the gift of a lifetime.
A life that's turbulent, tragic, and well-lived. That's coming up on Suddenly Family. If you're listening to this podcast, that means you appreciate investigative storytelling. What if you had the chance to investigate and share important stories? Whether you want to dive into a new career in journalism or start your own investigative podcast, the Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University offers a variety of graduate programs just for you. My first step was visiting cronkite.asu.edu, where you can explore the master's degrees in investigative journalism, mass communication, and sports journalism. Now, back to Suddenly Family. Connie Maltrop has an incredible and dramatic life from the moment she's born in Gary, Indiana in 1949. Just seconds after her birth, someone whisks baby Connie away, and within days, somehow, she ends up on the other side of America, in sunny Southern California, cradled in the arms of her new mother and father.
That was my favorite bedtime story. And that went like, we wanted a baby so badly. So we went to the hospital and there were hundreds of babies to choose from. We walked up and down the aisles until we saw you. And I just remember that as being a fabulous story. And I believed it. I believed it was true. It wasn't, but I believed it was true. And I thought it was very sweet. And I remember saying to my father, Daddy, tell me my story again.
And Connie's adoptive father does, over and over again. But as Connie gets older, her dad tells her the adoption was actually through a friend of a friend, but never gives her any more details. Connie has fond memories of her father. She recalls little about her adoptive mother, though, who dies when Connie is just 4 years old.
The only thing I remember is I was on top of a hospital building on the roof, and they brought this woman out who was wrapped in blankets, and they told me she was my mother, and I said, no, she's not my mother. Because my mother was not a little old lady wrapped up in a bunch of blankets sitting in a wheelchair. My mother was alive and vibrant, and she went downhill very, very quickly. And then she died shortly after that. That was the last visit. She was very nice. I don't actually remember her.
When you say she was a nice lady, even though I don't remember her, how do you know that then?
Because my second mother told me that I had said to her, I like my other mother much better, out of the mouths of babes. So that's how I know.
Connie's second mother enters the picture very quickly, because just as Connie's first mother dies, another tragedy is brewing in Connie's life.
And at the same time, my father had been given a year to live. He had a rheumatic heart. So he kind of was desperate and married the first thing that came along. And that's the woman that I knew as my mother, and she wasn't very nice.
How come you think your father was so desperate to get married if he knew he was dying?
Because he had a 4-year-old and a year to live. So what was going to happen to me? That's why he married her.
He wanted somebody there to take care of you.
That's right. And he did not bother to tell her that, oh, by the way, I only have a year to live, until after they were married. So she figured it out, and I became the punching bag. I remember being 10 years old, and she used to take coat hangers and straighten them out and then wire them together and make that into a whip. And she would tell me to go get naked and get in my bed, and then she would come in and whip me with those coat hangers. And of course, it would cut my skin.
What was her beef with you or her beef with the world?
Her beef with me was that my father married her only because of me. That's the only reason. I used to dream of my mother, my real mother, was going to come rescue me.
Was that just a feeling that you had in those difficult years with your stepmother, or did that continue even after?
No, when I left the roost, no, I never looked back. That was just when I was with my stepmother.
Did you ever think about your biological parents, wonder who they were in those years, or were you just living life at that point, a young adult after you left the roost?
Well, I wasn't really a very good adult. I ended up getting heavily involved in drugs. So it was probably a way of muting my pain.
And what was your pain? Was it that you'd been given up for adoption, that your mother had died, your father had died?
All of the above. I felt like I was unlovable. I was never going to be good enough. You know, the usual story with drug addiction. You hear it from any podium that none of us are ever good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not good looking enough. We're not funny enough. We're not enough, period. So I chose drugs as my way to be enough.
And what helped you get to this place? Because obviously, if you can speak of it with such awareness, clearly you did some work.
Oh, yes, I did. I hit my bottom, is what I ended up doing. I was so desperate to get high that I had a month's worth of a cardiac med and a month's worth of a bunch of other stuff, and I took them all in one night, and then called the ambulance. And I ended up in the intensive care unit, and then I got sent to rehab. Once in rehab, I actually learned how to live without drugs, because that was my question. I didn't think I could do it. I could never see a life without drugs. And now, oh my gosh, you couldn't pay me to go back. Oh, no.
Were you ever able to come to a place of peace with your abuser, your second mother, the woman who raised you longer than anyone else in your life?
I've actually forgiven her. I was talking with her in 1998 or so, and all of a sudden these words come out of I'm going to cry. I'm talking with her because I always wanted her to love me, and she never was going to. And these words come out of my mouth. You know, Mom, I've got to just let you know something. And I'm wondering, what the heck is it that I've got to let her know? I said, I forgive you for absolutely everything. And in my mind, I'm saying, why in the world would I say such a stupid thing when I don't mean a word of it? And I think that was God. I really do. I was very surprised when those words came out of my mouth.
What was her reaction when you said those words?
She said, oh, thank you. She felt it viscerally.
Are you glad those words found you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she died 3 weeks later. I'm very glad that I was able to tell her that, even if I didn't mean it, because eventually I did come to mean it. I don't think I ever would have forgiven her if I hadn't said those words.
And I'm curious, in all of those years, when your parents were gone, the problems you had with your stepmother, what was the narrative that you had made up in your mind about who your biological parents were?
My parents told me that my biological mother was 15 years old when she had me, and that my grandfather was a doctor. They made up this story so that was the reason why she had to give me up for adoption, because she was a doctor's daughter. So I just assumed that that was the way things had to be.
So you go through all these years, you grow up, you battle your problems with addiction, and do you look for your biological parents?
No, because they didn't know how to. Adoptions were closed back in those days. And from what I understood, I was never going to be able to find anything out until my daughter gave me Ancestry. And then I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And all I wanted to do was know what my heritage was.
What did you think your heritage was?
I had no idea.
Did you make up anything in your mind?
No, I didn't. I was never that creative. So she got me the Ancestry kit.
You really didn't know that there was going to be anything else?
I had no clue. Absolutely no clue. Well, plus the fact I was 67 when I got the kit and I get the results. Oh my gosh.
We'll be right back. Podcasts shed light on stories that otherwise may not be told. What if you could be that voice for someone? Well, you can. The Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University allows you to do just that. Become an investigative journalist, a strategic communicator in the media field, or a thought leader in the world of sports. Do what I did. Visit cronkite.asu.edu to learn more about their graduate degrees. Who will you become at the Cronkite School? Now, back to Suddenly Family.
And I get the results. And I went from having 3 blood relatives to over 1,600 overnight.
Just your daughter and your 2 grandchildren, and then in an instant, you see hundreds and hundreds of close and distant family members, like everyone else who takes a DNA test.
I was overwhelmed. That's absolutely what I was. Oh my gosh. I'm opening it up, and I've got huge numbers of people by name that have all done the test. And there's this other name in there, Shaman Star, a sibling. Her father is my father.
Your biological father.
He was married when he had a fling with my mom, and then he lied to her, and then she found out and she dumped him. But I was born 3 weeks before their oldest daughter was born. That's my sister. I now have 2 sisters. I had always wanted siblings, and it was just kind of too good to be true. I felt like this was all too good to be true. Oh dear. So she and I have met. I've met both of my sisters. Oh, they're awesome.
So those are sisters you see from the paternal side of your DNA results. What do you see on your maternal side?
I started trying to figure out how to communicate with some of them. And Darlene Strait, she was the first one to respond to me. We started talking, and at the same time, I had gotten my adoption papers from California. It said in there my mother's name. So I said to Darlene, well, my mother's name was Genevieve Mitch. She goes, oh, that's my aunt. Oh, by the way, she's still alive. I was floored, absolutely floored. And I thought, after all this time, I'm going to get my dream come true.
Did you even think it was a possibility your birth mother was still alive?
I did not think that at all. I just assumed not.
Why did you think your mom had died?
I just assumed that she had long gone because of my age. But she just turned 90. I said to my husband, we have to go to the airport right now, and we have to get tickets right now. 20 minutes later, my mother calls for the first time. She said, all right, what's your birthday? And I said, May 12th, 1949. Where were you born? Gary, Indiana. And she goes, okay, yeah, you're mine. She had been told I died at birth, so she thought it was a scam. So we flew down. She was all dressed up, looking beautiful. So I walked over to her and gave her a big hug, and we both started to cry. And we're both crying now. When is this crying stuff going to stop?
What did that feel like?
The first thing she said to me was, you're not dead. I said, no, I'm not.
Here's a woman that you think is dead. When she tells you, I thought you were dead, what goes through your mind?
She was robbed.
Who told her that?
Who told you? The doctors or nurses? She doesn't remember. They call it the baby scoop era.
This is the period from the end of World War II when premarital pregnancies were increasing and unwed mothers were often coerced or forced into giving their children up for adoption. And there's also been documentation of a surge in black market baby adoptions in that era.
It started in the 40s and went all the way up to the 80s. And it's called the baby scoop era. I'm one of those babies that got scooped up and taken away from their mother.
So you meet your mother, find out this unthinkable backstory, but how does the relationship between you two begin forming? Do you click right away?
We really clicked pretty quickly. So it was awesome. It was really awesome. I felt really comfortable with her.
And that was because you wanted it to be that way? You had to will that, or was it just like that?
I think it was just like that. I mean, I wanted it to be that way, but I don't think I had to force it. We were comfortable. We absconded with her. We got an Airbnb house and we took her with us. We stayed with each other for 4 or 5 days? 4 days. About 4 days. And we just kind of got to know each other. My husband would laugh. She and I go grocery shopping the exact same way. He'd say, you are just like your mother. We do a lot of things the exact same way. So she was a cook in a restaurant. I love to cook. She wanted to be a nurse when she was younger, but didn't have the money to go to school, and I am a nurse. I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Nature
versus nurture, yes. And I always thought that it was because my first adoptive mother died that I wanted to become a nurse, because I wanted to be a nurse my whole life. But that wasn't it. That was in my DNA.
Were there any difficulties? Were there parts of your personalities that clashed at all? Took some getting used to?
I don't think so.
It was all fairy tale.
So far has been fairy tale. So she was with us all summer last summer, and she's living here now. She's moved. She's given up her apartment and she's moved.
Whose idea was that?
Whose idea was it for you to move up here?
Yours.
Mine.
It's bold though, Connie. I've got to ask you, I think most people would be apprehensive about having their parents live with them, even the parents that raised them their entire lives. So for a woman who you're just forming a relationship with, albeit your biological mother, you don't know her that well. So what made you want to live with her? What made you want to pack her up and move her in with you?
I don't know. I just wanted to. I don't know what made me want to do that. I just wanted to.
What'd your husband say?
He's all for it. I've got the best husband on the planet.
Do you think you just wanted to make up for all that lost time?
I think so. Yeah. Simple as that.
What's it like living together?
It's great. It really is. It's great. I'm really glad she's here. I'm really, really, really glad she's here. I can help her, and I cook for her. She cooks for me. She makes great salads. We're doing great.
What's the best part of it?
The best part is I got my mama.
And what's the most challenging part? I know she's sitting right there, but I ask you to be honest. What's difficult about it?
The difficult parts are both of us are control freaks. And that comes from our backgrounds. I had a rough background. She had a rough background. So the controlling piece is that we're never going to let people do that to us again. And so that's the challenge.
Connie, what do you make of all this? You've had a very interesting life. An adoptive mother who died, an adoptive father who died, the evil stepmother. You've lived it all. What do you make of the deeper meaning of this? The ability to do DNA testing, to be connected to your mother after all of these years of never knowing her.
It's just God's gift to both of us.
Plan.
It's part of God's plan. That's what she just said. because she's the only one of her siblings who's still alive. This is pretty cool stuff. I believe this is God's gift to both of us for having a rough life. And it's just awesome.
On the next episode, the search for answers to my cousin's disappearance reveals a dark family secret.
I didn't know what to think. I just knew that he was missing and that none of the other first cousins had heard from him.
Folks were not out to their families of origin, and their families would find out when they were either in the hospital and dying or immediately after they died.
I think it was all a ruse on her part. I think she had it all planned from the very, very beginning.
Unbelievable. Oh my God. That's the worst thing I have ever heard about my family.
That's on the following edition of Suddenly Family, a production of CNN Philippines and Loomis Productions. Our editors are Lori Burke, Elizabeth Joseph, and Elaine Lee. Sound engineer, Levi Mercurio. Executive producer, Michelle Ancheta. Executive consultant, Army Harin Bennett. This show is created, written, and hosted by me. I'm Samuel Burke.
I have a responsibility as a journalist to tell the public what's going on.
Now more than ever, the role of the media and journalists is extremely important.
To make that first rough draft of history into again.
As journalists, we deliver the news, we give the right kind of information.
News really has the power to shape and influence a person's perspective of the world.
It's about the people, it's about the stories.
We verify, we confirm, we double check, we triple check from different sources.
To give them the truth. Trust in one word, I would believe, is integrity.
You can't force trust, you have to earn it.
People can't trust me if they know that I don't know what I'm talking about. It can be very challenging, but it's very, very fulfilling.
News you can trust.
News you can trust.
This is CNN Philippines. News you can trust.